Fabulous, and thank you for chatting. We're doing some video interviews for Reality Sandwich, which is a leading American counterculture website. You know of it, and you've been a very important figure, I guess, in psychedelic history, as one of the chemists that was instrumental in helping Albert Hofmann's problem child reach out to the world. How did you first get involved in that scene back in the 60s or early 70s?
Well, I was studying cultural revitalization movements under the banner of cultural anthropology, and I was also simultaneously studying yoga. And I left for Mexico and spent a month or two living with Maria Sabina in her hut.
Wow.
And being initiated into the mushroom ceremony.
And when year was this?
I'm not really sure, 61 or 62.
Yep.
And so Maria and I had some very interesting conversations, although I could not speak Spanish and she couldn't either.
Yeah.
She could only speak Mazatec and I could only speak English. But we started to communicate during the session in glossalalia, and I began to realize that there was a universal language that all life shared, and it was the DNA that is universal to all life forms. And that is where the spark of creation really comes from. And at this point, I decided that this was the only game in town, and that I needed to devote my life to psychedelic research. And when I got back, the person who took me to the Mazatec Sierras to introduce me to her said, well, I'm working as a lab tech at a research and development company in Manhattan. I can bring back all kinds of chemical precursors and equipment. And so I said, well, my mother's got a basement she's using, so
it's meant to be.
I see a little marriage happening here.
So were you intending to work with psilocybin at that time?
Yes, that was the first thing. I mean, when I went to the Mazatec Sierras to visit her, it was with a lot of foreknowledge of what research had been done, and Albert Hofmann was already one of my great heroes. And after the trip to Huautla de Jimenez, where she lived, I was able to understand, the importance of the psychedelic experience, and decided I wanted to start manufacturing psilocybin. Very ambitious project because it's not easy to do. So we started out, and I was very lucky to be successful for the first 3 steps on my first go-around, but the starting materials were too expensive. So I just really substituted the starting material for a much cheaper compound, which would make DMT. And I started to produce large amounts of DMT.
Now that wasn't that common in the early 60s, DMT. It was quite rare on the streets, wasn't it?
Well, it didn't exist until we started producing it. And that was when, I started creating circles of people, and we brought them to my little attic temple, and we started turning people on one after another, and created quite a circle of beautiful people. And then Richard Alpert, now Ramdas, came to talk at Brooklyn College, where I was studying anthropology, and he said he'd like to come home and visit with me after we spoke after the lecture. And I said, well, I've got a laboratory I'd like to show you. And then he said, well, you've been guiding all these people with DMT trips, and we're very interested in DMT up Millbrook. Why don't you come up and work with us there? And so I became the Chief Alchemist for the League for Spiritual Discovery. And in our charter, which is legally incorporated religion of the state of New York, was the right to use sacraments. And we used them, and we were persecuted for them in contravention of our constitutional rights. Of course, at that point, the pressure was so heavy for keeping the war in Vietnam going that we were being turned into, some kind of bugaboo, some kind of monsters. Okay.
Shall I take your
You
stuff?
can take some stuff if you want. I can take it too.
I can take this particular salad. You bring your papers.
Okay, I'll bring the papers. Thank you, darling.
Just to go back a step there, I really like your use of the term alchemist because some of the I guess some of the great acid cooks is that those words aren't grand enough to really describe the higher spiritual leanings of when someone makes LSD. It's not just a physical chemical reaction. There's spirit imbued. There's the set and setting, and there's really the ether and the subtle vibrations. Is there anything you've learnt about that process of being an alchemist?
Absolutely. The process of producing LSD or any transformative substance is in itself a spiritual path. That moment of realization when looking into a cloudy solution and you start to see the creation of rainbow white crystals that emit light on their own accord and outside of the body and inside of the body. It was Bear Owsley who discovered that his highly purified production LSD, which was the first in the world, was pizeoluminescent. That means when it was struck in a clear vial in a completely dark room and of sufficient purity, it would flash blue light. And so when I learned that, I began to realize that the light that is produced by these substances is an inward light as well as an outward light that we're perceiving through our sensory perception. It's actually being generated from inside. And then I went deeper into this with studying ibogaine and found out that light really comes from DNA, and that the DNA is actually the creative principle in the universe through which we are all propagated universally. And it is also piezoluminescent. Then I discovered later on in the 90s that DMT was also piezoluminescent, and took a jar of crystals I had just crystallized and banged them in a dark room, and the whole room lit up with this eerie blue fluorescence.
Wow.
So when you are producing these sacraments, and especially the fact that there is a little bit of leakage, especially with LSD, it's very hard to manufacture LSD without becoming affected by it.
Is it in the air particles or just in the skin?
Basically, when you isolate it in a very pure form, it becomes a very fine powder, and it can float in the air, and it touches any mucous membrane, and it will be absorbed. And you are on a constant LSD high while you're manufacturing. DMT is a different story. But nevertheless, still, the psychedelic experience, just the creation of the psychedelic substance, is a path to enlightenment.
You were saying before, this is, for you, it's partially also been a religious path. I mean, it's such a spiritual position you've been holding.
It's
as
mainly
mediator between heaven and earth, really. You're bringing some higher frequencies down. And you were persecuted for that, weren't you? I mean, as part of the whole war on drugs and the legalization of LSD.
There's so much investment in war and misery and the creation of conflict and division, not only in our political systems, but in our nature of conditioning ourselves and our children, that needs to be abandoned for a certain type of divine madness, where one can, in Bob Dylan's words in Tambourine Man, just be, one hand waving, free, dancing, nude on the beach, These acts of ecstatic revelation are healing in themselves, just so that going through that experience is a healing experience. Joy, love, dance are healing experiences. So this point that Bob Jesse makes about the medicalization, being way too overemphasized, and is basically a pretext for rationalizing people's work, does not fall on deaf ears with me, because that has been my motivation from the very beginning, to bring peace, love, and harmony to the human race, and to stop all this insane misery, torture, and homicide all over the world, and transform this planet. There is no reason in any way that this planet is not paradise for all of us to live and dance and love in. And that is what this work is all about.